Hi BookTube. It is 2015. Happy New Year to you all. And I'm going to bring in the new year the same way most of us are, by reflecting on the great things that happened last year and projecting forward for the future. So I am going to talk today about the my favorite books that I read this past year. I only have 7 books and 3 honorable mentions. So the number 7 book that I read in 2014 that I loved is Bailey's Cafe by Gloria Naylor. When I first read this book, while I was reading this book, I actually didn't think that I liked it that much. It's about it's a mythical cafe that exists basically at the end of a person's world. It's a cafe that usually shows up to people when they're in great pain. And the majority of the characters in this book are women. Each chapter basically tells a different story of a different patron of the cafe. And a lot of the themes in each of the stories are very similar. There's basically usually a female character of some sort trying to overcome some form of mental, physical, or sexual abuse or oppression from the people around them. And I think that this started to weigh really heavy on me while I was reading it. And so when I finished it, I actually thought to myself, I did not like that book. And I rated it low on Goodreads and was thinking that I probably wouldn't want to recommend it. But I kept thinking about it after I finished it. And one day I saw on Twitter, Dominique from Token in America, she tweeted that she was reading it. And I found myself being really excited about the fact that she was reading this book. And I realized that even though it wasn't necessarily an enjoyable experience reading the book, it left a humongous impact on me. And even though I don't think I would ever read this book all the way through again from beginning to end, there are definitely stories and chapters in this book that I would definitely want to revisit. So this is my number 7 pick for my favorite book from 2014, Bailey's Cafe by Gloria Naylor. The number 6 pick is The Glass Menagerie by Tennessee Williams. I read this during the 7 and 7 and a year-a-thon that I participated in August, and you can see some more detailed thoughts about this book in that video. I'll link it in the down bar, but it's a really touching play and probably my favorite Tennessee Williams play that I have read so far. And I really liked it, and I can't believe it took me so long to get to reading it. It's definitely a classic. And my number 5 pick is Sula by Toni Morrison. And love this book. It's a book about 2 childhood friends who grew up together, 2 young women, African American women, and when they became adults, they both went their separate ways. One character, Nell, decided to kind of fulfill the traditional gender roles that were expected of her. She got married, had kids, became a housewife, took care of her family. And Sula went the opposite direction. Sula kind of went out and experimented and explored the world and really wanted to learn more and more about her own self as a woman and as a person. And then this is about their growing up and their reunion and what that was like. And this book really, really touched me, and it has one of my absolute favorite endings in a book that I've read in a long time. The last couple of pages in the chapter is just beautiful. The revelation that Nell has at the end is amazing, and this was definitely one of my favorite books in 2014. So 20 winners. My next favorite book, number 4, is Cinder by Marissa Meyer. And I have to compliment BookTube thank BookTube for this book, because if I hadn't seen this book hauled and reviewed and displayed on a million different bookshelves, I probably never would have picked it up and read it. And I'm really happy that I did. It's not typically in my wheelhouse because I kind of don't read a lot of young adult novels anymore, but I read this one and I loved it. It was a fun read. I love the world, and I am looking forward to reading the next book in the series. And that's really rare for me because I am definitely not that into series anymore as I used to be, but I'm definitely looking forward to continuing this series in the upcoming Meyer. My number 3 pick is another book that I have to thank BookTube for, and that is The Watsons Go to Birmingham by Christopher Paul Curtis. I read this book during a middle grade readathon that I participated in the summer, and if I hadn't been doing that readathon, I never would have read this book. It's been sitting on my shelf since I was probably since I was 12, since I was old enough, since I was the age that this book was aimed for, and I never read it. And I finally got around to it, and I'm so happy that I did because it is amazing. It is hilarious. It is touching. It's really beautiful. The ending is amazing. I loved showing the relationship between the two brothers and how that grew. And I'm looking forward to reading more of him. I want to read Bud Not Buddy, which is another one of his bigger novels. And I also watched a movie of it. They made a movie of it with Anika Noni Ross in it, and it was really great. I really liked it. It was a really nice adaptation of the book, but I definitely really love this book, and I think it's really interesting how relevant a lot of the themes in this book still is to our day. My number 2 pick for 2014 is The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. Quick story about this book. I started reading this book in April. Started it during my lunch break and I got hooked immediately. And I read it all day after work during the evening until about 3 o'clock in the morning. And then I decided I needed to put it down and go to sleep because I had things I needed to do the next day and I really didn't need to be groggy and tired. I put the book down and was terrified and could not get to sleep and kept thinking about images and thoughts and stuff from the book and could not get to sleep. So I finally just decided, you know what, I'm going to finish the book tonight because why not? I mean, the stuff I had to do the next day weren't that important. So I turned my light back on. I completed the book, and I completed it before dawn, and I just kind of forgot to turn my light off. And yeah, so this is the first book in a really long time that literally made me turn the lights on at night in order to go to sleep. It was amazing. The characters are great in this book. Chris is probably one of my favorite mother characters I've ever seen. I loved her so much in this novel. She's just so cool, and the struggles of the priest was really interesting, and it was just a really, really awesome read, and I definitely would recommend. My ultimate favorite book that I read in 2014 is Middlesex by Trefue Eugenides. I love this book. This was a book where the experience of reading this book in its totality was awesome. I loved every page of it. I loved reading it. I was sad when I was done. I was just I literally finished it and thought to myself, I cannot wait to reread this. It was that amazing. There are so many different stories going on in this piece. It's a family history on one hand. It chronicles the rise and the fall of Detroit and the Motor City. It chronicles the coming of age story of our narrator Cal. It has a million different romances between Cal's grandparents, his parents, his first love. It's got bootlegger gangsters and priest, cult leader type priest people. It just has so much going on in this book, and the narrator in this book is so amazing. Cal is just great. Eugenides really lucked up really well and worked really well on creating a really wonderful narrative voice that you just want to follow. And I could read this guy talking about his entire life. I could read, did he only get Cal's life from his grandparents up until when he's 17? But I could read about his entire life, and I would probably never get bored because his voice is just so distinctive and so interesting. So this was definitely my favorite book that I read in 2014, and if you have not read this, I definitely would recommend it. It's a big book, but it was really totally worth it. So those are my picks for 2014. I am excited. Those are the 7 books out of the 38 books that I read for the year that I love the most. I also have 3 honorable mentions. All of those books that I just named are all books that I read for the first time in 2014. I also had a couple of rereads though that I read in 2014 where the experience of reading them a second time was actually even better than my experience of reading it the first time. And so those books are Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye, which was incredible the second time around. Like, I can't even really talk about it. It was just really amazing. I flew through this book almost like I hadn't read it before. It was so great. And I really liked that one. The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien. I reread this during 2014. I was rereading the series, and this right now stands out as my favorite book. I haven't reread The Return of the King yet, but I definitely love this book even more than The Fellowship of the King. The Fellowship of the Ring. And I don't know. And like this time around, I really love the character of Gimli, the dwarf. He was amazing. I didn't really realize it the first time I read. Like, his character has one of the most radical transformations, I feel, of all the other characters. Particularly the battle warriors types. Of course, the hobbits have like an immense transformation because their lives are completely different from the life that they are now having to live now that they've joined the Fellowship of the Ring. But even Gimli really has like a huge transformation. He has to get used to doing things that he doesn't normally do and meeting with people he doesn't normally meet. And I really found him charming in this book. I don't know why. I just found myself paying more attention to it. But I immensely enjoyed rereading this book. And so this would be another honorable mention for 2014. And my last one is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Just loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Can't really say anything else about it. I loved it so much. Thank you guys for a wonderful year in 2014. I'm hoping that I can post even more videos in 2015. And I will be posting a resolution video about the things that I hope to accomplish in 2015. So, Happy New Year again. And I will be talking to you all soon. Goodbye.